My name is Helena Moretti. But before you imagine anything about me, I need to say something I learned too late. Names can sound strong, elegant, imposing, but no name can hide the truth of who we really are. For many years, I tried to do exactly that. I repeated my name as if building a wall, believing that simply pronouncing it firmly would camouflage the woman I was becoming. A silently broken woman, morally exhausted, spiritually empty. Behind everything I appeared to be, there was a life, built on secrets. Secrets too heavy for any human being to carry, but which I allowed to accumulate within me nonetheless. I was the wife of a respected and feared man, an influential man within the mafia. While many saw me as privileged, with expensive clothes, sophisticated dinners, and a comfortable life, I knew I lived surrounded by shadows that drew closer night after night. Shadows that I myself chose to ignore. For years I clung to silence like someone holding onto a wooden plank amidst a shipwreck. I believed that if I didn't speak, if I didn't ask, if I didn't react, maybe I would be protected. Maybe I wouldn't be complicit. Maybe things would simply pass. But silence didn't save me. It sank me. Because everything I pretended not to see began to transform into sleepless nights, into memories that insisted on returning, into thoughts that haunted me even in my most fragile moments. I used to tell myself, Helena, you're not to blame. I repeated it like a mantra, like an antidote to ease my conscience. But that phrase, which was once a shield, gradually became my prison. Because no one can hide from their own eyes forever. The truth began to catch up with me in small details. A stained garment that shouldn't have been stained. Phone calls that only came in the middle of the night. Whispered conversations behind closed doors. Gestures that betrayed more than any words. Each of these things accumulated inside me like stones tied to my soul. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, I knew the blood of innocent people was splattering on me too. Even though I had never touched a weapon, I believed I would take these secrets to the grave. That death would be my final hiding place. That upon closing my eyes for the last time, everything I had tried to bury inside myself would finally be buried with it. But I was wrong. Because when the end came, it didn't bring silence. It brought revelation. And it was there, in that instant when my heart stopped, that I understood the truth I had spent my life avoiding. No secret survives eternity. No mask remains in the light of God. No shadow can hide what the soul truly carries. And that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. What I saw, what I faced, and what Jesus revealed to me when there was nowhere left to run. If you stay with me, you'll understand why my story doesn't end with death, and why it may have reached you at the exact moment you most needed to hear it. Now I know this account. If this has already touched you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Stay with me to hear what comes next. Revelations that can transform your life and awaken your heart before it's too late. Looking back and revisiting the years I lived with Lorenzo, my ex-husband, I realize I allowed myself to be seduced by a world that shone on the outside but rotted on the inside. In the beginning, it was impossible not to be impressed by how everything seemed to flow around him. Doors opened, people fell, silent, glances shifted, and I, Helena Moretti, enjoyed an illusory sense of importance I had never experienced before. It was as if his presence enveloped me in an untouchable aura, giving me the false impression that I was above danger, above consequences, even above God's judgment. Living in that world of luxury, wealth, and privilege made me believe I had finally found security, when in reality, I had only settled into a gilded prison, fueled by fear and sustained by sin. The lavish parties, the imported cars, the glittering jewels, and the unexpected trips were merely a thin mask placed over a reality I avoided facing. I knew that none of it was pure, that every glint reflected on the surface of the precious stones hid stories I didn't dare ask. And yet, I accepted each gift as if it were a well-deserved reward, deliberately ignoring the nights when Lorenzo arrived with a heavy gaze, tense hands, and a metallic smell that I pretended not to notice. With each new silence I embraced, my spirit seemed to recede a little further, giving way to a darkness that slowly seeped in. Over the years, I realized that I was not only complicit in what I saw, but also in what I chose to ignore. However, at that time, I believed that as long as everything remained hidden, I would still be in control. Little did I know that true control was slipping through the cracks of my own conscience, preparing the ground for the revelation that would change everything. I still vividly remember the day everything started to change inside me. Although at that moment I wasn't aware of the gravity of what I was allowing into my soul. Lorenzo appeared at home with a crumpled shirt, a hardened face, and a silence that seemed to weigh more than any word he could utter. There were small dark stains near his collar, marks I recognized instantly, but which my cowardly heart tried to deny. At that instant, my whole body screamed for answers, but my mind, trained by living with danger, chose to look away and pretend nothing was happening. It was there, in that seemingly simple gesture of turning his face away, that the door opened. Years later, I understood that the first darkness never arrives with noise, doesn't invade violently, nor announce itself with threats. It insinuates itself like a discreet shadow that settles in the corner of a thought and begins to grow when it is not confronted. I felt the shadow entering, but I convinced myself that it was just worry, that my imagination was exaggerating, that I shouldn't ask questions I might not be ready to hear. When I offered silence as an answer, I gave more than my voice. I gave my discernment, my sensitivity, my spiritual responsibility. I spent that night awake, trying to justify my fears, trying to calm my conscience with explanations that I knew wouldn't hold up. And yet, I fell asleep with a feeling that something inside me had been ripped away. It was the first time I realized the distance between who I was and who I was becoming, but I still didn't have the courage to admit it. And yet that moment was only the beginning, because the true revelation, the one I could never have imagined, was yet to come, waiting for the right moment to confront me definitively. Over time, the shadow that entered with that first glance began to expand within me, occupying spaces that were once guided by sensitivity, faith, and a basic notion of right and wrong that I slowly let die. The constant coexistence with fear, tension, and the silent consequences of Lorenzo's choices transformed my perception of reality so gradually that when I finally realized it, I was no longer the same woman. I watched his nightly comings and goings with a coldness that frightened me, as if my heart had found comfort in what had previously terrified me. The truth is that the soul doesn't harden overnight. It calcifies with each silence, each justification, each lie repeated to oneself to survive the environment one has chosen to remain in. I, Helena Moretti, found myself accepting situations that would have horrified me years before. I remember nights when Lorenzo would arrive exhausted, his shoulders heavy and his gaze vacant, and the only question I asked was if he wanted something to eat. It was as if I had created an internal mechanism that shut down anything that could hurt. Indifference became my armor, but also my condemnation, because it allowed me to continue living as if nothing was happening, when, in fact, I was already spiritually extinguished. My consciousness, once so sensitive, became just a distant breath, suffocated by the walls of a house that hid stories I didn't want to acknowledge as real. I believed that as long as I didn't participate directly, I would be protected, but I didn't realize that the simple act of accepting already made me complicit. The worst part is that, even perceiving my inner deterioration, I I continued moving forward as if it were impossible to turn back. Little did I know that life would lead me to a moment when all this indifference would be ripped away and revealed before me with brutal clarity, exposing truths I never imagined facing. Death came to me on a day that, ironically, seemed as ordinary as any other, as if fate had chosen the moment I least expected to confront me with everything I had been avoiding for years. I was in the kitchen, preparing coffee that I intended to share with an uncomfortable silence that had become my constant companion. It was then that I felt a sudden pressure in the back of my head, followed by a dizziness so intense that it forced me to grip the edge of the table. The air seemed to escape my lungs as if it had been ripped away, and before I could call for help, my body began to inevitably give way, surrendering to a weakness that no effort could stop. The sensation was of drowning from the inside, as if something was extinguishing every spark of life that still remained within me. I heard the distant sound of the cup falling to the floor, the glass shattering, but everything around me seemed to lose definition, as if the world were dissolving into liquid shadows. My desperate attempt to stay conscious was futile. My hands trembled uncontrollably, my legs no longer responded, and a dull, deep pain relentlessly shot through my skull. I felt my body tilt, fall, until it was swallowed by an almost welcoming darkness. The sound of my own heartbeat, once so familiar, began to echo too slowly, too irregularly, until it transformed into absolute silence. It was at that moment that I realized, with indescribable dread, that death had not come as an end, but as a door being opened before me. And when that door swung open completely, revealing something that surpassed any human explanation, I understood that I was about to witness a truth that would change everything forever. When darkness enveloped me completely, I imagined that this was the definitive end, the absolute silence that accompanies the last breath. However, something unexpected happened. I felt a strange lightness run through my body. Not a pleasant lightness, but a disconcerting sensation of detachment, as if each part of me was slowly being dislodged. The darkness parted like a veil being lifted, and suddenly I found myself facing a scene my understanding could not comprehend. My body was there, stretched out on the kitchen floor, motionless, fragile, completely oblivious to the presence that now observed me. I was standing, but not on my feet. I was breathing, but not with my lungs. I could see, but not with my eyes. Confusion overwhelmed me so intensely that I desperately tried to touch my own face, hoping to feel my skin warm, but my hand pierced the air as if I were made of mist. Panic then set in. I called for help, screamed Lorenzo's name, cried out to God, but no words seemed to come out of me. It was as if my voice existed only within a silent, isolated space that no one else could hear. Meanwhile, the scene remained still, cold, indifferent, as if my death were just another everyday occurrence in that corrupt world I had accepted as normal. That's when I noticed something even more terrifying. A dense darkness began to form around me, not as an absence of light, but as a conscious, observant presence that was slowly approaching. I felt that it wasn't just shadow, it was judgment approaching. And it was precisely at the peak of this terror that a brightness appeared ahead, a light so vivid and imposing that it made everything else disappear, announcing that the deepest revelation was yet to come. The light that appeared before me was not an ordinary brightness. It didn't resemble the glow of lamps, nor the reflection of the sun. It was a living presence, an intensity that seemed to pierce everything and at the same time reveal every detail of what was hidden within me. As this light drew closer, I felt that something beyond my mind was being exposed, as if every memory, every omitted choice, every deliberate silence was being brought to the surface without my being able to stop it. When the light finally opened, revealing a figure before me, my spirit recognized it immediately, even before I could formulate any thought. It was Jesus. Not the Jesus of the paintings I had seen throughout my life, nor the idealized Jesus I imagined during the few prayers I offered when I still had some fear. It was a presence so holy, so immense, so absolutely true that my entire being bowed down without my being able to control it. He didn't say my name. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't accuse me. You just looked at me. And in that look was everything. The truth I had run from my whole life, the silence I had turned into a shield, the guilt I had tried to box up in excuses, and the life I should have lived but chose to ignore. It was a look so profound, it seemed to pierce layers of my soul I didn't even know existed. Shame enveloped me so completely that I felt as if I were naked before eternity, unable to hide what I had done, and above all, what I had allowed. His presence was judgment, but it was also mercy. It was revelation, but also an invitation. And in that instant, I understood that what he was about to show me would not only be about my past, it would be about the spiritual consequences of the choices I insisted on justifying. The true revelation was approaching, and there was nowhere left to hide. When Jesus' eyes met mine, I felt that he was not only seeing what I had done, but also what I had become because of every silent choice. It was then that without gesture, without word, and without warning, the light around me opened as if a great veil were being torn, revealing before me a sequence of scenes I never imagined I would see again. I saw faces I couldn't forget, even when I tried to erase them from my memory. They were wives weeping at their gates, waiting for husbands who would never return, mothers holding photographs that faded with time, children who grew up believing in invented stories to justify absences that would never be filled. And there, before them, I finally understood that evil never strikes just one body. It spreads like current that wounds entire generations. As those images moved before me with a painful clarity, I deeply felt the weight of every silence I had chosen to keep. Jesus didn't need to explain anything. I knew my omission wasn't just cowardice, it was complicity. It was spiritual blood dripping from hands I considered clean. And as this understanding revealed itself more forcefully, I felt the presence of a place opening up beside the light, a region of dense, cold darkness, where the distance from God was so real it became almost palpable. There was no fire, no monsters, no screams. There was only the absolute absence of hope, an endless echo of choices never regretted. I understood at that moment that this darkness was the natural destiny of those who spend their lives avoiding the truth, fleeing from the light, hiding behind justifications. And as this realization completely enveloped me, I understood that the next revelation would determine whether I would remain in that abyss or whether there would still be something beyond for me. When that darkness seemed to almost swallow me whole, I felt the light return with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the harsh revelation I had just faced. It was as if, even knowing every hidden corner of my soul, Jesus was still willing to stand before me, offering something I never imagined I deserved, a real opportunity for change. He didn't smile, didn't comfort me, didn't minimize any of my guilt, but there was something in his presence that conveyed an undeniable truth. I could still choose. This realization was so strong that my spirit trembled, as if awakening from a long slumber. For the first time, I didn't feel fear of him, but fear of losing that chance. The feeling of hope, so fragile and yet so intense, penetrated my being in a way that tore apart everything I had built as a defense over the years. It was then that, in a single instant, I felt my body pull my consciousness back as if I were being sucked from the inside. The impact was brutal. My eyes opened with difficulty. Air rushed into my lungs like an explosion, and the sound of the doctors shouting around me confirmed what, until seconds before, seemed impossible. I had returned. Life returned like a wave too strong to be contained, and along with it came a weight completely different from the one that had accompanied me before. It was no longer paralyzing guilt. It was responsibility. I knew I couldn't continue living as before. Not after what I had seen, not after Jesus' gaze piercing my soul. Still weak, still confused, still scared, I decided I needed to act. I began seeking spiritual help, confronting memories I had always avoided, writing letters to people I never imagined I'd have the courage to seek out. And the further I progressed in this process, the more I realized that a second chance wasn't a prize. It was a calling that demanded renunciation, sacrifice, and truth. Today, when I revisit everything I've lived through, I realize that my greatest prison was never the luxurious house where I lived, nor the dangerous environment I became accustomed to, nor even the silent control Lorenzo exerted over my every step. My true prison was always the silence I chose to cultivate, the silence I thought would protect me, that would keep me away from the spiritual consequences that would inevitably one day reach me. I lived like someone trying to deceive their own soul, believing that by denying or hiding the truth, it would cease to exist, or at least lose its power over me. But it's not like that. The truth, sooner or later, finds a way, and when it emerges, there is no armor that can resist, nor justification that can convince. After my experience, I understood that evil is not limited to the visible actions we commit, but also to the truths we fail to confront. It hides in the injustices we pretend not to see, in the glances we avert, in the words we don't say, in the attitudes we don't correct, and in the lives we allow to be destroyed while we hide behind the excuse that we are not responsible. It is in this silent terrain that sin strengthens itself, not only in acts, but in passive consent, in the acceptance of what should shock us, in the omission that makes us comfortable while the world around us crumbles. It was this revelation that made me understand, absolutely, that no secret remains safe before God. His light cannot be extinguished, not even by the darkness we try to create around our choices. No matter how well constructed our masks are, how skillfully we disguise our mistakes, or how silent we are in our omissions, eternity reveals everything. Every lie, every justification, every omission, even the one that seemed harmless, will be brought to light. And before that light, no human defense can withstand it. What we believed we controlled, we never did. I share my story not to seek pity, nor to justify my past, but to warn you who are listening to these words now. I know that many live silently carrying burdens they don't confess to anyone, believing that ignoring them will be enough. They believe that time softens what they failed to confront, that no one will know, that life will go on as if nothing had happened. But silence can be as destructive as sin itself. It corrodes, infiltrates thoughts, hardens the soul, creates a false sense of security, and makes a person feel immune while silently accumulating seeds that sooner or later will blossom before eternity. Don't wait for life to be ripped away from you to understand the value of repentance. Don't wait for God to intervene with dramatic signs or extreme experiences for you to see what you've been avoiding. Every moment you ignore the truth, every choice to remain silent, increases the weight on your conscience and leaves invisible marks on your soul. Marks that no one else notices, but that God knows in detail. He sees what we hide, feels what we feel, and understands what prevents us from moving forward. But He also gives us opportunities to change while we still breathe, while there is still time to choose life instead of destruction. Reflect on this now. Examine your heart without excuses, without omissions. Ask yourself, what secrets am I cultivating? What truths am I avoiding? What omissions have shaped my soul and hardened my spirit? Because the moment you decide to confront the truth, acknowledge your mistakes, seek forgiveness, and correct what is possible, you open the way for real transformation. True change begins the instant honesty with yourself becomes more important than any justification or mask you may have created. If this story touched you in any way, if it brought to the surface something you've been hiding, I invite you to continue with us. Subscribe to the channel, follow accounts that reveal profound truths and that, just as they transformed my life, can touch yours. Each video is more than a narrative. It's an opportunity for your heart to awaken, for your soul to find direction, and for God's light to have space to act where darkness seemed to reign. The journey doesn't end here, and perhaps the next truth revealed will be exactly the one your heart most needs to hear.